Tickets are now on sale for the 38th Annual National Homebrewers Conference, also known as HomebrewCon. Join your homebrewing comrades on Baltimore's historic waterfront for 3 unforgettable days of learning, camaraderie, and delicious beer. Limited space is available, so be sure to register early at homebrewcon.org. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, March 10th, 2016. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, James Sites joins us again to share sour beer and wine hybrids that pair interesting flavor combinations with James's own house sour culture. Steve Wilkes joins me to sample and to evaluate. If you're new to home brewing or would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And if you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener. And don't forget to get a copy of our Brewer's Logbook. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us first. Go to our website, basicbrewing.com, click on our Amazon link. It will take you back to Amazon. You can shop to your heart's content. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show. We greatly, greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app on Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're in the BlackBerry podcast directory. And the Stitcher app as well. And if you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support. Thanks to everybody who's done so already. And if you do that, I'll send you some links to some special videos that we did for people who support the podcast financially. I'm almost finished compiling audio clips from the first 500 episodes of Basic Brewing Radio for next week's retrospective clip show. Hard to believe it's next week. Oh, my gosh. Lots of good stuff included. And unfortunately, even more great stuff not included. I mean, the show's only going to be so long. Some difficult decisions involved on picking what to include and what not to include. And most of the time it came down to which sound bites most accurately captured the essence of that episode and kind of where we are or were on the timeline. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you like the final product next week. Boy, it was fun to go through the list and kind of drop the needle on those episodes. Speaking of next week, Andy Sparks, Chris Colby, and I will be in New Zealand for the first ever New Zealand National Homebrewers Conference. Chris and I had a Skype conference call with the organizers of the New Zealand conference to go over the last-minute details, and I'm sure that you will meet those guys in the upcoming shows. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I anticipate learning a lot and bringing lots of sound back for this show and hopefully some video as well. And be sure to check our Twitter and Facebook feeds for updates and photos and such. I posted a video episode of Basic Brewing Video on Monday where I take you step by step of my attempt at making crystal malt out of Vienna, or as close as we can come to making crystal malt at home. Then Steve and I taste a Vienna ale brewed with the result of my experiment. We're getting a lot of good comments on the Facebook page and on the YouTube channel. And as I said in the video, it's not the way professional maltsters make crystal malt, but it turns out a really tasty product, and it's fun as well. Last night, I kegged my latest version of my rye wit, made only with malted wheat and malted rye as the grain bill, and 2 ounces of Nelson Sauvin hops at the end of the boil. Very tasty, despite the fact that it's only 2.6% ABV. And the malted rye really gives the beer a substantial mouthfeel, even at that low gravity. So I'm looking forward to getting that fully carbonated and enjoying that that will be the subject of a future Basic Brewing video episode, I am sure. Let's talk for a minute about our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. I was wondering what Desiree and Dave had listed as their seasonal beers on highgravitybrew.com. You know, spring's coming up, so I wandered over there and to highgravitybrew.com and saw Emerald Island ESB, paired with Wyeast's English Special Bitter, available January through March. This beer is a balance between bitter and malt. The addition of caramel malt creates a richer malt character. Brewed with emerald hops, they add a fruity and floral aroma and flavor. That sounds tasty. Or Henry's Brown Ale, paired with Wyeast's British Cask Ale, available January through March. This beer is a Southern Brown Ale, a darker and sweeter beer than its northern cousin. Think of it as a small version of a sweet stout or a big version of an English mild. Or Extraordinary Ordinary Bitter, paired with Wyeast's Thames Valley 2 yeast, available January through March. This beer is an ordinary/standard bitter, a low-alcohol session beer that you can drink several glasses of and still be able to walk and talk. This beer is a balance of malt and hops. All of those sound good. And High Gravity's kits are customizable, so you can choose extract or all grain, milled or unmilled. And even on some kits, you can add special ingredients and take them to the nth degree. So head on over to highgravitybrew.com to check all that out. And thanks again to Desiree and Dave for sponsoring this show. And we hope to see them this week for Steve and me to shoot a new informational little video about their equipment kits. Okay, James and I have a lot to talk about. So let's dive into his latest round of tasty, sour beer and wine hybrids. James Sites, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks for having me again, James.
You are the man who likes to cross the line between beer and wine.
I try to keep it interesting.
I was trying to think of a way to describe you, as I was setting up Skype, and I thought of that, and I said, "Hey, that's a rhyme. You can that can be your tagline."
Thank you.
If you ever go commercial, you can put that on your bottles.
I see a T-shirt in my future.
Well, send me one.
I will.
This is the third time you've been on the show, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And it gets more and more interestinger every time that you come on. Are you getting more adventurous as time goes on?
I think I'm learning more from, I don't want to say the mistakes that I've made, but from previous projects. Like the ones that we'll be talking about today build on the knowledge that I gained by, doing the red and white wine sour beer hybrids. I think that those were good projects in and of themselves, but there was still something more to be gained from that. So, that's why, especially this first project that we'll talk about, Francesca, how it came into being.
Well, Steve and I tasted the beers or the beverages that you sent. So let's go down the line here and start with Francesca. What kind of an animal is this?
So it started off with a dark sour base, Munich red wheat, special B and Cara Munich. Added to the mash was Hershey's cocoa and fennel seed that I ground up. Everything went swimmingly, no craziness as far as the fermentation went. Yeah, there was that sort of licorice type of aspect to it because of the fennel.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I split it. After I added the red grape, I split it into a blueberry and cherry, we'll say half. And I added the chocolate concentrate from, it's almost like chocolate extract, but I don't want to call it extract because that makes it seem like it's sort of one of those fake extracts.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a company called Nielsen Massey that makes these. And I use a lot of their citrus oils as well. And I really liked what they brought to the beer or the beverage. So I added the chocolate concentrate, and then I blended those two into a mix. So there was a blueberry, there was a cherry, and then there was a blueberry and cherry with the red grape. So, I mean, there's a lot of constituent ingredients going into it. But I felt the thing that I missed with the red grape sour hybrid was there just wasn't an earthiness to it. There was something, I don't want to say it was imbalanced, but there was there seemed like there was something missing. Like it was more so wine in its affectation than beer.
Yeah, as I don't want to spoil it, but but this is a multi-layered beverage. Can you give us some idea of quantities of each of these ingredients and how you balance those out?
Sure. I used in, I guess, the final volume of the beer or beverage. The final volume was 10 gallons, and in 10 gallons, I used 1.5 ounces of fennel seed. I used 8 ounces of cocoa powder. I used 72 ounces of grape juice, of red grape concentrate, 32 ounces of blueberry and dark cherry concentrate. And the chocolate extract, I used 2 ounces of that, 2 fluid ounces.
And then you fermented using your house sour culture?
Yes. I mean, that's something I've been building up over the years, adding different microbes to it. I've never had it analyzed, but I would think that there's probably around, a dozen key microbes in there between different strains of Brettanomyces, different strains of Lactobacillus, and Saccharomyces strains as well.
And how are you keeping your sour or your house sour culture happy? Do you have it separate from beverages or beers, or is it just that you pitch from the dregs of other beers into the new beers?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I do, James. I know there's a lot of people that keep specific cultures in their fridge, or some people, even go so far as to plate them and freeze them. But, I look out at my cellar as to the sour beers or the Brett beers that are out there and what kind of characteristic I'd like from them to add to the current beer. And I just pick and choose, prop up the dregs and pitch them. I mean, sometimes I don't even prop them up. I'll just add them directly to the fermenter.
And I guess in this way, it's kind of the old-fashioned way of doing things.
I think so. I think that there's a lot to be said, we'll say, for keeping it simple.
Well, let's go to the tasting with me and Steve, tasting the Francesca. Steve Wilkes, welcome back to the studio.
Thanks, James. It's a pleasure to be back.
It's an additional pleasure because we are drinking now Francesca, a red wine sour. And boy, this is a very, very tasty beverage.
I really like this, and I have never had anything like it before, except that it reminds me of big sour beers like La Folie. Mm-hmm. Wow, this is quite something.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a whole lot of layers here. The tartness is as tart as I remember La Folie being back in the old days. I mean, when we very first started tasting La Folie, we were like, oh my God, this is so sour, but it's so good.
Right.
Either our baseline has changed such that, I wonder if, pH readings or whatever, whether this is equally tart as that original beer, or whether our tartness level has, right. Our tongues have gone numb to the tartness, and this is even more tart.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking the same thing. I'm going to say it's even more tart, though, because the plastic in this glass is starting to melt. This baby's tart. I mean, but it's man, it's good. And it's so complicated. So help me with the concept here because I haven't heard the interview. So it's
neither have I.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's red wine and or I should say, it's wine ingredients and beer ingredients brewed together.
Right, and this is the third time that we've tasted James's beverages.
Yeah.
They're hybrids. It's like nothing we've had before. And this one has like cocoa and fennel seed and chocolate concentrate and red grape and blueberry and cherry concentrate. It's so many levels in there.
Yeah.
And there's so much mixed together, but it's not muddy. You know what I'm saying?
It's not, and the earthiness of the cocoa and the herbaceousness is nice. The balance that he struck with all those incongruent ingredients is remarkable and very skillfully done. I like this quite a lot and would be happily order this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I would say this: to me, it really is very, very tart, and I'm not sure that my system could take more than, say, 3 or 4 gallons of it.
Because in a lifetime or just in a sitting?
No, in one setting. So I would have to limit my intake.
Well, you need like a chocolate cake or something to go along with this.
Yeah,
this would be
sure.
a very good pairing. Now, when I first tasted it, the dog wants some. When I first tasted it, I got a spiciness that I think is the fennel seed.
Yeah.
And it was like that jumped out at me. And then there are all these base notes underneath that I don't know that I could have told you there was chocolate in it specifically, or whether there was cherry or grape, but it all blends together in such a way that it's really wonderful.
Yeah, I agree, and I do pick the chocolate up pretty heavily. But then again, I had the spoiler alert because before I tasted it, I knew there was chocolate in it. But I can really pick up the chocolate. And it is a foundation note. It's not like drinking a Nestle's Quick. Oh, that's chocolate. It's not like that. But it's like a really strong building.
Right.
Yeah, it's got a good foundation and
or in music terms, it's like a symphony orchestra. When you're hearing everything, you might not hear the oboes, but they're in there.
And thank God you can never hear those oboes.
Our apologies to any oboe players out there. Or the bassoon. I was thinking of the bassoon, but I said, anyway. Well, any of the double reed instruments. Okay. We need to quit gushing about the Francesca.
Yeah.
And enjoy the rest of our samples and move on from there. So I guess if we were going to use a baseball analogy, this would have been an out of the park home run.
And you guys seem like you really liked it. I'm real happy that you did. It's something from a beer perspective that I haven't really encountered myself. Maybe there's someone out there making something like this, but I haven't run into it personally.
And it was so well balanced. I mean, it was multi-layered, as I said. But everything was in balance and kind of contributed to the whole. And while Steve said that he did get chocolate in the flavors, I didn't necessarily get that, although there was a deep richness to the beverage that undoubtedly came from the chocolate. And then the fennel seed I got as more of a kind of a spiciness. Rather than in that context, rather than an anise or that kind of flavor.
I mean, I think if you didn't know that it was there, you would just sort of pick it up as some type of undercurrent. Maybe you say it's complexity, but then if someone points out, there's chocolate in this or there's fennel in this, then you can kind of imagine or hallucinate that it's there.
Now, and this one was really, really, really tart, and it was the most sour thing that you sent. How do you account for that?
You know what? My sour base beers aren't that terribly low in pH. They're probably like high to middle threes as far as pH goes. But I think once you start to add different fruits, there's such a variety of acids in them that it gives you sort of a complexity just with those different acids, whether it be malic acid or, whether it's citric acid or what have you. It adds to that lactic acid that's already there from the lactobacillus and or pediococcus. And that really gives you a different acid palette, I guess you'd say.
Well, it was certainly tart, and my wife tasted the next one, and she said that it was too sour for her. So I can't imagine. We didn't let her taste the Francesca because it certainly would have been too sour for her.
Yeah, that might have sworn her completely off of sour beer altogether.
So the next one up is the Devil Blushed. What do we got here?
This is, I think, an interesting project on a couple levels. The first one is it's 100% liquid malt extract. So no mash, no anything. Just open the can, add it in there. I've always wanted to do an all malt extract sour because I think as far as any beer style goes, that's one where you're really not going to pick that up. And I don't think if anyone did taste this beer that they would be able to pick out that it was malt extract. So then to that, I bought hibiscus tea. I couldn't source, or it will be more difficult for me to source hibiscus leaves. So I bought some hibiscus tea, made that into a strong tea. After the active fermentation was done with the house sour culture, added the hibiscus tea, the tart cherry concentrate, and orange oil.
So again, give us quantities so that we can have some guidance on the mixture here. So asking you to give away your trade secrets.
No. I'm really happy to share. I think that's how I've gotten ideas, by looking at what other people have done and building upon that. And if I can help other people get inspired or just kind of help them down the road with how much of certain ingredients to use, I'm more than happy to do that. So in this was a 5-gallon batch. So I used 32 ounces of tart cherry concentrate. I used 2.5 ounces, that's dry, of hibiscus tea. And I used, looks like 6 tablespoons of orange oil.
Of course, our metric friends are going crazy right now.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. I would think so.
Sorry about that. So that again, you're layering things. What was the inspiration?
The inspiration really was the hibiscus and some of the flavor characteristics that come along with that. I really wanted to highlight that, but also build on it as well. I read a book a while back. It's called The Flavor Bible. It's by Karen Page and Andrew Dornenberg, and it's a culinary book, but truthfully, I think it's the best brewing book that's not a brewing book that I've ever read. It basically talks about classic flavor combinations and things like this, things like what went into Francesca. Those are all things that they stress in there. But the difficult part about it is they're doing it from a cooking perspective, and you have to know what happens to these ingredients post-fermentation, and especially post-fermentation with Brettanomyces involved. So, if there are some volatile phenols in those ingredients, Brett might do some things to it that you might not want it to do.
Oh, that's true. I mean, raw cherry concentrate is not going to be the same as once it goes through a fermentation process, especially with these bugs.
Well, here's the thing that I found too is certain fruits, once you take the sweetness away from them, they're very hard to discern. I mean, I know when you guys did the reviews of the apple cider beers that I had sent, I mean, it would be hard to pick out apple cider in those. because it was more of a neutral type of ingredient. I think the rest of the ingredients overpowered it.
Well, we tasted this one as well, of course. So let's go back to the studio, back in time, with Steve tasting the Devil Blushed. Okay, we're tasting the Devil Blushed, hibiscus, cherry, and orange. Very tasty.
This is a very nice malt beverage.
Yeah, it's not I was about to call it a beer, but it's not a beer, I guess. Not in the traditional sense. It's a malt beverage.
It's a lot more drinkable than the first malt beverage. By drinkable, I mean I could drink more of it without, say, the first one you really needed some food with it.
Right.
To me, this one I could take a pint of this and just call me Mr. Happy. It's really good. It has a great flavor. The floral characteristics came out beautifully.
It's not as tart as the first one.
No.
It's got a substantial body, although it's kind of refreshing. I get one of the adjectives that popped in my mind was when before we looked at the ingredients was kind of floral in like a soapy way, but it's not soapy. The beverage is not soapy. That would sound bad. But it's just like if you walk into a guest bathroom and there's that floral scent that you get from, soap or air fresheners or whatever. It's not that strong.
The little pink thing in the...
Yeah. Urinal cake. No.
No. I know your head. I know exactly what you mean.
It sounds like I'm knocking it, but I'm not.
Yeah.
It's just that's... I very seldom have floral stuff to drink, and so that's what my mind latched onto. So I guess that's the hibiscus.
Yeah, it is. I cook quite a bit with rose water and orange water. So those are Mediterranean, or Middle Eastern ingredients that you use.
I cook with rosemary.
Rosemary
and more Amsterdam.
I hope you don't cook pickles. Oh,
Two
God.
people got that joke.
Yeah. Both are fans. Anyway, this reminded I got this sense of rose water. It's the hibiscus. And so, that really does come through pretty heavily. And there's no head retention at all with this, and I would assume that's because of the orange oil.
And that but there's a citrusy, and there's a little bit of the cherry thing in there. But again, none of these ingredients kind of knock you on the head. It's all blended together nicely, and we didn't talk about the color. It's kind of a reddish. It has a reddish hue.
It does have a reddish hue.
Does she have a pinkish hue? Is there a pinkish hue? But very nice. Less complex, but more drinkable than the first. But still very well crafted, I would say.
Yeah, there's a trend here that the skillful blending of these flavors, I think, would be the trend that I see. Because, the first one for sure took a lot of chutzpah to put those ingredients together and to make them work.
Just don't say that near the brew pot.
That's right. Chutzpah. This one maybe not so much in that orange and cherry and hibiscus. Those flavors go together well, and I could, without ever having them, they sound good together. But this is a really nice take on that. It's kind of a nice take on a tea room flavor.
It's very refreshing.
Yeah, it's great. It's like a junior mint.
All right.
Okay.
So if the first one was was an out of the park home run, I'd say this one was at least a triple.
I'll take it. I'll take a stand up triple.
It was very enjoyable. Again, we thought it was very well balanced. Much more drinkable than the first one in the sense that the first one was really challenging in that it was really tart. But there was just so much going on that it's not it's something that would better be paired with food probably. This one was a nice drinker where I could see sitting on the porch on a nice day, drinking a pint of this. So again, well done.
Thank you. I mean, that's really my goal. I think a lot of times it gets lost in a lot of people's mindsets, and they just want to make things that are big, whether it's big in alcohol or it's big in flavor or it's big in sourness. I want my beers to be drinkable. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my number one goal in doing that. Yes, I want them to be interesting, but if they're over at the top in any way, I mean, how much can you really drink before your palate completely fatigues and you're just like, I don't want any more?
Well, there's a time and a place for everything. I mean, they make glasses smaller than a pint.
I guess I just maybe need to find smaller bottles than I like the bottle in larger formats. But sometimes that could be challenging.
But you know what I mean. They also make glasses bigger than a pint. I mean, you can get a liter of like a Pilsner or an Oktoberfest or something like that, and it's fine for that, for that style. You wouldn't want a liter necessarily of Francesca.
No, I know that I wouldn't. I mean, that's something that I'd be very happy with 8 or 10 ounces.
Sure. Well, now the third one we tasted, the Illusion, seems ambitious in a different way. Tell us about this one.
So this is, as we had talked about before we went on the air, this is actually inspired by a Basic Brewing episode from a while back. You had a gentleman on, Dan Kazmarski, and he talked about trying to dry out sweet beers by adding Brettanomyces to them once he had decanted them. So I thought, I have some beers that are, we'll just say, past their prime. They were taking on some oxidative flavors, and I had enough of them that I thought, well, I can make 5 gallons of this project. So what I did is I took a couple different beers. I had a couple braggots, a big imperial stout type of braggot. I had one that had apple pie, spices in it, had an old ale and a barley wine, and all those were taking on that oxidative characteristic. I mean, it wasn't over the top, but it was definitely at least, mild to moderate as far as their characteristics went. So I thought I was going to try what Dan had mentioned, except that I pitched the mixed sour culture instead of pitching just Brettanomyces to see what would happen with them. I very probably wasn't going to drink that much of these beers, and they would have gotten more oxidized over time. So it was either use them to cook with, pour them down the drain, or, do this project with them. So I chose the third.
So it's kind of a mulligan stew of big beers.
Absolutely. So I found that something different happened with the beer. Again, I had about 5 to 6 gallons of it, and the mixed cultures completely scrubbed the oxidation, that sherry-like flavor to it. But unfortunately, it replaced that with, I would say, a mild acetic character, which on its own was not very good. So I had 5 gallons of a sour ale that I didn't know what I was going to do with. It was a sorghum and molasses based beer. That might be a story for another day, but I didn't know what I was going to do with that. So I decided to blend it because I had just gotten a completely spent oak rum barrel from one of the local breweries here in Pittsburgh, Spoonwood Brewing. One of the guys who's the owner / head brewer there, Steve Ilnicki is his name. He called me up one day and he's like, "Hey, I have this 10-gallon oak barrel. Do you want it?" And of course I said, "Sure." So I put both of these beers in there. I wouldn't even say aged it, but I let them commingle in there for a couple weeks before bottling, and the Illusion was what came about with it. Now, I essentially put it in the barrel just to inoculate the barrel for some projects that I did later on.
Okay, well, Steve and I, of course, committed our palates to the experiment, and we tasted the Illusion.
Okay, we're now at the Illusion Blended Dark Sour Ale. And, I think if we had received this beer on its own, I think that we would be happier with it than those first two beers or beverages were so enjoyable that now we're tasting this and we're going, well,
This is not off in the sense that it's poorly made. In my opinion, this is off in the sense that there's too much going on. There are too many variables, and they don't all play well together. I'm not even exactly sure what's not playing well together. Because, I don't know, the sour effect with the sorghum and the molasses, so you've got something that's kind of sulfury already being activated, so to speak, with the sour inoculations, and then all the different braggots and old ales and barley wines, and I just think it's a bridge too far.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, the first one, the Francesca.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on, but it was well blended.
It was
just like,
very...
wow, there's so many layers here. This one, there's nothing that, I mean, I get a teeny bit of a plasticky note, and I'm not sure whether that's from like the rum or something, or I can't identify it. But it's like a discordant. It's like a little note that's, in the symphony. If one violin player is out of tune,
right,
you can get it.
Right,
you can hear it.
I think that's a perfect analogy that really clarified it for me. It's not that any one thing is bad, it's just out of tune. That's perfect. Yeah, which is different than brewing, something and having it be infected, and right. You got giant barnyard, or you got rope hanging in the stuff. It's not that at all. It's just one too many spices in the spaghetti sauce.
I think what James has done is on the first two beers, he did so well that he set himself up for this beer, which if I had made it, I probably would have been happy with.
Well, yeah.
I probably would have said, "Hey, that's pretty good." I made a good sour beer, but it just doesn't come together as well as the other.
It doesn't hang together as well. I do like there's kind of a chocolatey note in it. So that's probably the dark, the big heavy dark flavors are coming through pretty heavily, and they taste chocolatey to me. And it is a little sour, and that's nice actually.
And I like the way that the tartness balances the big beers.
Yeah.
So that it's very drinkable. It's not like a syrupy beverage.
No, it's not.
The tartness well balances the body of the beer, so that it's drinkable in that way.
Right. If it were me and I had the opportunity to do it, I would go back and deconstruct this and rebuild it a little bit, and because I think it's on the right path, and he's obviously skilled at blending flavors. I'm a pretty good cook, but I've made some real. I've had some family dinners that weren't happening.
And like you said, it's not this beer is not awful. We're drinking it, and I'm actually enjoying it the more I drink it.
Well, that says nothing for your character, by the way.
But like I say, compared to the other two, which were, in my opinion, very, very, very well blended and balanced, and everything was going on. I was just like, wow, these are really good.
Yeah.
This one, maybe just by comparison, this is not as good. And like you said, I don't know how I would more creatively say what's not happening.
Yeah, it's just one of those things when I don't know. That's and to me though, that's part of the fun of what we do. Is that you try to hit a home run every time, and you don't always, but that's okay because you learn from it. I don't even know what I'd do differently.
Yeah.
The only thing I could say is that it appears from the recipe mix that I see here, black braggot, apple pie braggot, old ale, barley wine, fermented in sour culture, then put onto a rum barrel for a couple of weeks. That's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And it might be just a little bit of editing, and you'd have a killer beer.
Or maybe before it went into the barrel, maybe it would have been wonderful, or who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what I do differently because there's so much going on. Again, it's not spoiled. It's not that. It's just and it's kind of cool.
Maybe this adds to our credibility to say that we're not completely happy with something because the first two we were like, oh my God, this is great.
They were great.
And then this is like, well, you know.
Well, the first two were really nice, and I would have been proud to have brewed in both of them. And I wouldn't be unproud to brew this. It's just not there yet.
Right.
Yep.
And maybe, who knows, maybe a few months in the bottle or something. Something
you
may
never
happen
know.
there. So, anyway.
Right.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, James.
So if the Francesca was an out-of-the-park home run, the Devil Blushed was at least a stand-up triple. The Illusion, at least a single.
All right, as long as I'm on base, I think I'm good.
We didn't dislike it. It just didn't pop as well as the other two as far as blending. So when you do blending, one thing that you are afraid of, or at least in my mind would be afraid of, is making something muddy. So you lose characteristics, and so instead of combining things together to get something that's greater than the sum of its parts, you wind up with something that loses something. And I just wonder if that's what happened here, and I wonder if you share our opinion.
I agree that it could be better as a base. And the reason I say that is because, again, if we go back to those sour beer wine hybrids, I sent you guys the base beer, which I thought was a good representation of what I was going for. But there was also additional fruitings of that beer. So like with the white wine one, I added guava and papaya. To the red wine one, I added cherry and blueberry. So there was we'll say, an increased complexity to it, if you would. Mm-hmm. So this base beer, I split this in half. So 5 gallons went to creating this beer. Another 5 gallons, which is I just bottled the other day, I put cranberries and orange peel in. Mm-hmm. And I thought it served very well as a base because, again, still complex on its own, maybe not that great, but then you add that complexity of the citrus, you add that complexity of the cranberries, and all of a sudden you have something a little bit different. So, no, I agree with you. I agree with you guys that although a success in that it is something that's drinkable, something that I guess we could say is enjoyable, it could still maybe go a little bit further than it did.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of brightening it up a bit, with those tart, more sort of, like I say, bright flavors. I think that would maybe add that layer of complexity that this one is missing. And again, we didn't dislike the beer; we kept drinking it. It's just that, after being spoiled by those first two, it just wasn't as stellar. So I'd be interested to see, how you think that the addition of those ingredients added to the project.
I mean, the funny thing is I try to stretch this project out as long as it'll go. So half of it went and got bottled and is, the project we're talking about now. A fourth of it got bottled just the other day with the cranberry and orange. And then another fourth of it, I added maraschino cherries and Italian vermouth to. So, we're trying different things here. Some of them work, some of them don't. I'm okay when they don't, because I learn from those projects as much as I learn from the ones that turn out great.
Well, this may transition into into the fourth bottle that you sent, and this was called. And I'm not sure of the pronunciation. Is it Janus or Janus? Janus.
I think either will work. I like Janus, but
Now,
I think either's acceptable.
now, is it a Greek figure that has two faces?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this one, if the first one was an out of the park home run, the second was a triple, and the third was a single. This one didn't get up to the plate.
Well, I mean,
Something happened, and it happens every now and then, especially when you're trying some experimental stuff with the different kinds of bugs. I opened this and poured it into glasses, and the ammonia that came off of the out of the beer was too much. We couldn't sample. So what? But you tried something different with this one. This was an experimental project. Tell us about it.
yeah. So this beer was a simple grain bill, just Pils malt and red wheat, winter wheat, no hops. This beer was designed around a different lactic acid bacteria. So usually when someone's looking to sour a beer, they choose one or two or both of the common lactic acid bacteria, which are Lactobacillus species or Pediococcus damnosus. This one, I wanted to find out what it's usually, the bacteria is usually used in malolactic fermentation in wine, especially red wine. And it's called Enococcus eni, and it's a very interesting organism, and I've never heard of it used in just straight souring. Now it's used to transform malic acid into lactic acid in red wine because malic acid is much more, we'll say pungent. It has much more character. It's more of a rough acidity in wine. And the reason that they use it is because it's more alcohol tolerant than Lactobacillus species, and it doesn't have the downsides to, as Pediococcus does, like diacetyl formation or what we call exopolysaccharides, which is ropiness or sickness. People don't want their wines to look like, for lack of a better term, snot.
I couldn't tell you why.
Yeah. So what I did with this one is I pitched the Enococcus first, let it go for a day. After that, I pitched the Wyeast Canadian Belgian strain, let that go for a day, and then after that added my house Brett culture, which is 3 strains of Brettanomyces. Initially, it threw off a ton of sulfur, which I should have known to maybe condition a little bit longer before I sent it to you.
I think I have to correct myself. Did I say ammonia before?
Yeah,
I meant sulfur. That's what I'm sorry.
Either way, it, like we talked about, kind of smelled like a paper mill.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good thing.
Yeah, it wasn't ammonia, it was sulfur. I'm sorry.
You know, the good thing about the whole project is, we'll say anecdotally, people had said, yes, this microbe can sour beer. And now we know for 100% that it can. Now, was it Enococcus's fault that this threw a lot of sulfur? You know, was it a drop in pH that caused this, the yeast strain, the Saccharomyces strain, this Canadian Belgian strain, to throw off a bunch of sulfur? I don't know the answer to that. But at least we know that it can sour a beer. Now, how we go about that, I guess, is the next challenge. Successfully, that is.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if anybody else has had experience with this. And you say it's Enococcus. It's spelled Oenococcus.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm curious. I mean, you didn't use any hops, so
no.
So there's I'm just wondering. I guess the sulfur compounds came from the malt.
I would think, yeah, they came from. I mean, one of the byproducts of fermentation for one of the microbes. Like I said, I couldn't tell you when the information, and I tried to look up as much as I possibly could regarding this microbe, but I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate, but unfortunately, most of it has to do with malolactic fermentation in wine. It doesn't talk about, is it hop intolerant? Because there's not that information out there. I don't think many people have done. I'm not saying no one's done it, but I don't think many people have done it, and the people that have maybe haven't made that information public. So, I'm still up in the air about what to do with it next, but I still do want to use the organism. I think it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you can tame that and come out with something interesting and drinkable, that would be a good discovery. I guess it kept working in the bottle. Because James, I don't think you would have sent that beer to us, had you?
No, I mean, the bottles. The only difference is the bottles that I cracked before I sent them to you were 12-ounce bottles, and I sent you guys a bomber. Mm. So I'm not sure if there was a difference as far as the volume went, as far as that went. I don't know if it was that particular bottle. I couldn't tell you. I'm very apologetic as to sending you a bottle full of sulfur. But
well, and it could have been a bottle infection. I mean, that happens. It happens in competitions, and that's why you send multiple bottles. And I have sent, a contaminated bottle to Chris Colby, in doing the show. So, I'm certainly not immune to that kind of thing. But I do appreciate you're willing to step up and talk about, something that didn't work out. I don't think that you should be apologetic or embarrassed or anything. I think that, you're doing some very experimental stuff, and data is data.
Yeah, indeed.
So, and you have proven again and again that you know what you're doing. Generally, if everything that you sent me, had some severe difficulties, we would not be having this conversation. So,
certainly not. So, and I included this organism into what I now use as my house sour culture. So, I don't know what that's bringing to the table, but I figure the more microbial diversity that I have, the more interesting the end products will keep getting. So, I mean, I keep trying to build that culture to make it something that is as unique as I can, whether that's capturing, microbes from the outside, from the ambient air, or adding known microbes in there. It's Jean Vanois has said that, Cantillon's beers have over 100 different strains of yeast and bacteria. And I don't know if I'm quite aiming for that many, but I think the more that are in there within reason, the more complex an end product you're going to get.
Yeah. And you're tailoring, you are tailoring your own collection there.
Yeah.
You're in a way your own terroir. So it's. I wish I had the patience, but and you're developing skills that other people don't have. So again, you're to be congratulated.
Thank you.
But this is fun.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your keeping us in the loop, and I look forward to future updates. And who knows? You seem to be on sort of the cutting edge of making stuff up. Coming up with new things, and not just following other people's recipes or whatever. You're coming up with stuff that's all brand new, and so we find it inspiring, and I hope that everybody else does too.
Thanks a ton, James. I appreciate it.
Thank you, James. Well, thanks again to James. he's really doing some adventurous and tasty stuff. And I gave James the option not to talk about the sulfury beer that didn't work out because, bad bottles happen every now and then. And we don't know, sometimes we don't know why. But James said that he wanted everybody to hear about it and to have an opportunity to know about that, essentially to learn along with James and me, and if you have an experience with the Enococcus similar to James's result or otherwise, drop me a line and let me know, and I'll pass on that information. We learn as much from our mistakes as our successes. So, and speaking of successes, I saved a little bit of that Francesca in the fridge. I corked it off and I'm saving it for a tasty meal pairing. That should be very nice. So again, good work, James Sites. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form at basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can check out our logbooks where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check out all that stuff at basicbrewingshop.com. And thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Pet Urine Detector, Ultraviolet Blacklight Flashlight by Ultralight, Discover Dog and Cat Stains. Sounds like a fun Friday night. And IKEA Puppy Stuffed Animal Soft Toy Dog Golden Retriever. So if you get one of those, you don't need the first thing. Or maybe you want to use the one on the second. I don't know. Thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping, and we greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine as well through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dutson down in Austin, Texas. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.